So I really have two goals today. My first is to be real, and it's to be authentic. And my definition of authenticity is showing up as who you really are instead of who the world says you're supposed to be. And that's really hard, but that's one of my goals and that's one of my values. And I would invite you as we talk today to be thinking about, what are some of my core values? If my core values are compassion or my core values are integrity, in times of stress, sometimes one of the things that I will do is say, hey, am I behaving in a way that's congruent with my values? And if the answer is no, then don't beat yourself up, but just kind of get back on track. So the second thing that I want to do is ask for a little bit of grace in that. And I want to give you a skill set. I want to give you a skill set. I work with a lot of first responders. You're very skill set oriented, very strong left brain, and I love that about you. But there can be a lot of areas for improving our skills and how we regulate emotion, all right? And the cool thing is this all relates to science in the brain, and so if anybody out there is a science nerd, this is going to make you better. And thinking about this, I was thinking about our phones. We're all glued to our phones, right? And I was thinking, what do I do if the red light battery comes on my phone? I charge it, right? It's an alert. It needs to be charged. If it gets on the red light and it doesn't get charged, what happens to my phone? It's depleted of energy. It doesn't function properly. I was just thinking, I take care of my phone sometimes than I do myself, right? So I have all these signals. There's all these red lights going off. Red lights in my body, red lights in the way I'm thinking, regulates in maybe the way I'm fighting with my family, maybe a lack of compassion for other people who are in the fight and in the struggle with me, maybe placing blame where blame really doesn't need to go. And I'm not attending my own lectures. Recharge. So I want to give you a skill set for that, all right? I will try really hard not to be boring. I will try really hard not to lecture. My dad was a preacher for 41 years, and he was a great preacher, but I don't like to be preached to. I like to learn something that's going to help my life in real life. So I want to give you real life things. In my value of authenticity, I will not ask you to do or practice things that I don't do and practice. I feel like that's fake and that's inauthentic, and that's not how I show up. So if I tell you to do anything today, or I invite you, because that's really more my style, if I invite you, then no, it's something I can try, it's something I can accept, it's something I can reject, it's something I can play around with. It's not a should. And the should thinking is actually something that it's kind of an all or nothing thinking, and it really can get you into serious trouble. It's great in terms of what should we do with our PPE and what should we do in this certain call. But in terms of being emotionally flexible and learning to adapt and rise up when stuff is going difficult, learning to be flexible is a good thing. How do we recharge? This is going to be the only nerdy part. But I got to tell you, they don't teach this in counselor school, and they don't even teach this in nursing school. So this is really good neuroscience from the world's experts. And especially people in orientation have heard this, our new EMS, but it's good to have a refresher, and it's good to just go, okay, this is science, this is brain. There's a huge problem in our field of first responders, and that is this belief that vulnerability is weakness, right? They've actually done 15 years of research on this. And the truth is, there's a misconception and a myth that vulnerability is weakness. That's actually not true. What the hard data says is that vulnerability is your greatest measure of courage. Doesn't always feel like courage, right? It might feel weak when we're feeling exposed. But whether they're researching billionaire CEOs, or whether they're researching Navy SEALs, people in the military, and first responders, people from 9/11, they've asked all of these people, and they've looked at the data. And I'll ask you today, can you think of a single act of courage that you've seen in someone else or maybe that you've seen in yourself that didn't require vulnerability. So the research says that vulnerability is our greatest measure of courage, all right? And it's interesting because there's kind of a paradox, right? So like what looks like vulnerability in me, what feels like vulnerability in me, you don't see that. When I said, oh, I'm really uncomfortable being on camera and I'm really not, it feels yuck. You're like, oh, dude, I can relate. That's, ugh, public speaking's yuck. And I do public speaking, all right? So the paradox is that when I say something vulnerable or I show vulnerability, that's actually courage. You see it as courage, even though I feel it as weakness. But it's the last thing that I want to show, right? But it's the first thing I'm going to look for in you to see if I can trust you. So there's kind of a paradox there. So I'm going to ask you to lean in with me and recognize that this is a sign of strength, okay? So in terms of our brains, I'm going to be a little geeky for just a few minutes, just so we can all be on the same page, all right? And what I would love more than anything is if we could actually have regular dialogue, right? About, dude, you're just in your lizard brain. Or, hey, you're just, and it just becomes commonplace, like, hey, this is what the brain is on trauma. It's no big deal, all right? That's why a lot of you guys know I privately work with people from FBI, from DEA, SWAT, all kinds of things like that. Because when we can explain this is a normal reaction to trauma. This is a normal reaction to the absorbing stress every day. Just like, I don't know, I'm not an EMS worker, right? But isn't bleeding a normal reaction to like being stabbed? I think so, right? So this is just a normal reaction. So rather than deny it or pretend it's not there, what I want to do is lean into it, kind of embrace the discomfort of it, acknowledge it, and it can't live and grow when we do that, and the science supports that. So in terms of our brain, I do have a prop. So we're going to start about the science of the brain, and we're going to start kind of here. I call it back brain. This is my lizard brain. So everybody have a good visual? And I'm not talking down to you, all right? The brain remembers better in pictures than it does words. So you will remember this, right? Rah! This is my lizard brain, all right? So this is like my brain stem. And this is responsible for survival, all right? So and it'll tell you on the chart, we're down here. This is instinctive. All right, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to move. So this is instinctive. This comes on without my permission. Now, I don't know about you. Do you like it when people do things to you or yours without permission? I don't like it. Now, it's supposed to help us survive when we feel like we're under a threat. The truth is, even though this is part of our brain, it's turning on our body. So when I feel like I'm under a threat, real or perceived, and y'all, I'm calling y'all dudes, sorry, but I hear y'all call each other that. So real or perceived, if it's a real threat, like, oh my gosh, there's this virus that could be everywhere all over my desk. Oh my gosh, did I touch my face? Oh my gosh, am I going to bring this home to my family? Oh my gosh, what if I'm responsible for that? Oh my gosh, what if I can't remember, right? Whether it's real like that or an active shooter, or how about this? You're having trouble in your marriage. Your wife sends you a text. Meet me at 4 o'clock. We need to talk. This is what comes on, right? So instinctively, we all go, ugh, and we expect, we feel it in our body. So even though this is part of the brain, it's turning on your body. So without my permission, this is what happens. Immediately, your breath tightens. Everything contracts. So I've noticed a lot of you guys, I can spot a first responder walking in Walmart or on the street, because y'all all end up, if you don't do your work, which I'll invite you to start doing, kind of walking like this, because there's so much always being prepared for the next threat, which makes you great at your job, right? But those are also survival responses that might not be serving you in your relationships, all right? So when I don't feel safe, real or perceived, am I going to get furloughed? Am I going to be able to pay my rent this month? Am I going to be able to find childcare for my child when I'm trying to work? Am I going to bring a virus? All of these things are real. Am I going to remember how many times has this PPE protocol changed? Am I going to, right? Who do I call if I have all of that stuff? It's real, all right? And y'all like to compare, like my big deal is not as big a deal as that person's big deal, so I'm just not going to say anything, and you suffer in silence. And that's also why y'all have a higher history and a higher rate of alcohol and drug problems, physical disorders, and suicide. But we're not going to do that because we're going to learn these skills. When I don't feel safe, my muscles contract. My shoulders are in my ears. So for me, shoulders are always in the ears. You're breathing right here. So we're breathing shallow. All right? We're breathing shallow. Sometimes it'll feel like there's like a weight on my chest. It's the worst. All right? I always tell people when you're in lizard brain, it's a gut punch. Now, sometimes the lizard brain gut punch might just be a small noticing, like, that didn't feel good, right? Like maybe somebody sneezed and they were 6.5 feet away, right? So it's a small noticing. And then sometimes, right? There was a call over the weekend. It's a bigger gut punch, and you literally lose your breath. That's normal, all right? What this is going to do to cortisol, as soon as, there's a reason you feel it in your stomach. Cortisol is going to start firing. Cortisol is made in your stomach. Well, most of your serotonin is also made in your stomach. That's a mood regulator that helps you feel good, and all these antidepressants a lot of us are on, all right? But the serotonin can't keep up because the cortisol. All right? Now, this is really important, and really important for why I strongly invite you to start doing some of this work. The irony is, when we don't feel safe, what do you think happens to your immune function? What happens to your immune system? Your immune functioning goes down. So, not only am I fighting this battle on every other front, my immune function goes down, and I'm more susceptible to this threat and to any other threat, which means heart disease, which means all these inflammatory conditions. Inflammation goes up, immune function goes down. Those are the facts, all right? So when I don't feel safe, that's what happens. It feels like a gut punch. My neurotransmitters, which are these chemicals that regulate mood, appetite, sleep, and sex drive, they get wired for threat, which means adrenaline, norepinephrine. A lot of y'all have problems with anger. Guess what? That would be your glutamate. Glutamate's directly related to aggression. All right? So this is a normal reaction. It's not that you're mean. It's not that you're a jerk. It's that we can all function, and when we get under stress, all right, we stay in this part of our brain. And let me tell you, I go to this part of my brain every single day. For real. Sometimes multiple times a day. But the good news is, when I'm there, I don't deny it and I don't fight it. And that's where sometimes our first responder way that I see is y'all are hard chargers and you charge through it. And this is something that we kind of have to pay attention to and yield to maybe a little bit in order to kind of win the battle. Fair enough? So when I don't feel safe, this comes on. All right, so my body's responding, my body, without my permission, like there's a threat right now. Blood pressure goes up, heart rate increases. All right? Now, above that is kind of our limbic system. And in terms of the science, I'll be quick with it. Your limbic system is your feeling brain. It's where feeling is stored, and it's where the sensory information is stored. So like if you had a bad call, or maybe there was a child death, right? Your brain, literally the visual cortex in your brain lights up, and it takes a snapshot of the worst part. So when I was a young girl and I was there watching my mom die of breast cancer, right? I remember one point, and after we held her head up because she was spitting up blood and she would aspirate. And I remember one point I had on a white t-shirt, and I looked, and my mom's blood is on my white shirt. And of course, that was a trauma, and so my brain went click. So my visual cortex lit up, and I remembered with great specificity this. And it gets stuck. So it can get stored, and you can remember that. So, and this is where, too, childhood stuff does, and they're like, oh, God, she's going to make me talk about my childhood. No, I'm not. But if I didn't feel safe when that happened, if I felt like something was my fault, if I felt like a failure, if I felt, right, that stuff, that gets stored in this same part of the brain. And it doesn't matter if something happened 20 years ago or if it happened in my childhood. If I feel the same way, like I'm trapped or, right, it's going to bring up those same feelings. So when I don't feel safe, the feeling, terror, fear, anxiety, my brain says, oh, Brenda doesn't feel safe. So my lizard brain says, oh, I have to help Brenda feel safe. Come on, let's go. All right? And so then the brain and the body are responding like there's a threat right now. And that's great if you're in a forest and there's a bear. It's great for that. It's great for making you at your job. You hear the tones, you react. It's great for that. It's not great for after the call. It's not great for when you have to take off literally this armor and come back and be a human. Y'all are really good at compartmentalizing, and that makes you great at your job. But it can get in the way of relationships, and that's where I know you're hurting. So, we want to find some ways to buffer this. Above our feeling brain is our thinking brain. We'll call it the thinking brain, your neocortex if you want a fancy word, whatever. In this part of the brain, I learn. Like all these things you'll have to learn and the tests you have to take and the protocols I hear Dr. Desai doing. To learn, I have to be in my thinking brain. To make decisions, I have to be in my thinking brain. To solve problems, I have to be in my thinking brain. To filter appropriately, meaning I can't just call people names or say, well, you stupid idiot, even though people aren't wearing their mask or doing, right? So to filter things, I have to be here. Guess what? My words live here. So for some of you, you're like, there's things that I just don't have words for. You're totally right. That lives here. But guess what? Guess what the science says? Oh, remembering is also here. Concentration is also here. So if you're struggling with that, guess what? That's normal. So what the science says is this. I'm going to flip the page. And I actually have the world's expert brain scan. If you want to see it, it's very exciting. But if not, then this is what it's telling you. What it tells you is when I feel unsafe, real or perceived, right? It doesn't feel good. My lizard brain comes on. And my body is putting everything, right? So my body's responding like the threat's happening right then. Blood pressure's going up. Adrenaline's going, right? Heart rate, this will affect heart rate variability, affects all of that stuff. My thinking brain, which I need to function and make good decisions and remember all this stuff, my thinking brain, I can't connect to it. The best way that I can explain it, now it doesn't fall out of your brain or anything, but the best way I can explain it is this. Have you ever been somewhere and not been able to connect to the Wi-Fi, right? So maybe you're at a conference, you're in your lobby of a hotel on vacation, and you're watching all these other people and they're connected, and you don't have the password, right? And it can turn into a whole storm in your head, like, what's wrong with me? God, I feel so stupid. And what that's actually going to do, it's gonna stroke your lizard brain a little. It's going to just put some more flames on it because now you're going to be in shame over being stupid, not being able to figure it out, and da-da-da-da. Instead of just going, oh, I'm just not connected. So when I say I go to lizard brain every day, I do, but when I'm there, I go, oh, I'm in lizard brain. Oh, what do I need? Oh, I need to get back online. I'm just offline. So if you can go, oh, this is just a normal reaction. This is what we do. We absorb trauma for a living. I just need to get back online. That would actually help immensely instead of denying that it's there or hard charging through it. Because the hard charging, because then it's going to be like your phone battery, right? I'm running on empty. I'm depleted. And we make bad decisions. We're not safe. We say things to people that make other people hurt. And then we end up being divided. And we've got to be one team, one fight. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So, having social support, feeling safe with people. And again, that sounds so hearts and flowers. I can just hear you like, oh God, safe people. You know, no. There's a science to this. If you want to look up polyvagal theory, then be a geek, all right? And look up polyvagal theory. Look up the vagus nerve and says, what does the science say about when we don't feel safe, right? When we don't feel safe, it's going to turn this on, and my functioning is going to go down. I have usually about 30% less of my brain when I'm in my lizard brain, all right? I need every part that I can get. So what can I do? Number one, I want you to know that we do have a CISM team. CISM stands for Crisis Incident Stress Response. These people are amazing, all right? So we have a number. Do I have the phone number written down? It is 972-807-5603. And you can call that number, and I know you don't like to talk, so guess what? You can text, because I know you prefer to text. You can call or text that number 24/7, and there is not going to be a paper trail following you. Nobody is going to try to take your gun. Nobody is going to try to put you in behavioral health center. What we know is that the biggest predictor of resilience from the research is having social support, safe people. Like me being able to say, okay, I'm super vulnerable here. I don't like doing live things. I feel fat. My pants don't fit. You know, what if I screw up? What if they think I'm stupid and can't, right? I'm trusting you to be safe for me. So we have to have people that can be a safe place to land. And then when I was thinking about it, I was like, you know, something's missing, something's missing. And I was like, oh, as a trauma therapist, I know what it is. It's when I have a personal connection, right? It means if I have a child death, but the reason that it bothers me is because I have a child at home the same age. Or maybe I'm struggling with fertility silently, and I'm trying to get pregnant and I can't get pregnant. And I go on a call where there's a methamphetamine addict trying to overdose and kill the unborn baby. I connect to that, all right? So that's 55% of the calls we've gotten. We've got over 60, 70 calls, something like that already just in a few months. So what that tells me is none of us know everybody's personal story. None of us know what could be hurtful to someone else. But if I'm just not comfortable with my own emotion and I'm just making jokes and making light of a situation, you know what I just did? I just made myself unsafe to my partner. I just made myself another unsafe person. And you know what I did to them? I just wired them for this. Okay, so I need you to know this is affecting your nervous system. Trauma from the research is really stored in two places. It's stored in my feelings and it's stored in my body. This is from the world's expert, Bessel van der Kolk. Feelings and bodies. Now, if I don't give myself permission to feel my feelings, because we don't do that, where is this all going to go? It's going to go to your nervous system. Right? It's all going to go to your body until the wisest part of you shuts you down. So if you don't give yourself permission to just notice the emotion when it's coming up, and maybe, I don't know, give yourself permission to feel more than anger. Anger is actually a secondary emotion. It's usually covering something else up. Give yourself permission to feel or show something other than sarcasm. Or that good old, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, got this, I've got this, right? That's what I see as a clinician, you know, overwhelmingly, we're most comfortable showing that, but not showing, God, I'm scared I'm gonna bring this home to my kids. God, I'm scared. God, this is, right? And there's not words for it, because guess what? When you go through something traumatic, your words go offline. That's normal. But that's why you've got to pay attention to the body and you've got to notice what's coming up. And I don't even care if you can tell me the feeling you're feeling, but I want you to pay attention to one thing. Is it good or bad? I can know when do I feel good or do I feel bad? And then do something. Fair enough? All right. But you've got to be safe for your people. So this is huge to me in terms of showing us. So a skill set. Hurt feelings don't heal themselves, all right? So they don't just go away over time, they just pile up. And if anybody's ever had credit card debt that piles up, right? That debt's gonna come due. So if you can learn and give yourself permission, and I have something in my office, and if anybody wants this is copywritten and I have permission to use it. It's a permission slip, can they see that? And this sounds so super silly, right? Permission slip, like when I had to go to the bathroom in school? Yes. But sometimes just the act of giving yourself permission is huge. I give myself permission today. When I go into a vulnerable situation, I give myself permission to be real. I give myself permission to mess up. I give myself permission not to beat myself up if I touch my face. I give myself, right? Look at a note if I need a note. To not be Dr. Desai. to be, right? Because I'm not Dr. Desai, and he's great, and he's so impressive, and, right? So just to be yourself and let that be okay. So writing yourself permission. It might be permission to be scared, permission to, talk about this, permission to try something different even though that feels weird, right? So that's what I'm asking you to do. Our brain is wired for story, and this is science, folks, and I didn't even know this until July. But I knew our brain was wired for story, but I didn't know. So when we feel vulnerable, right, which just means uncertain, right now everything's uncertain. When we feel vulnerable, our brain does one of two things. I either go to a previous story in my head, because my brain is wired for story. That's how we used to survive, right? Before we had phones and all that. So when I feel unsafe, my brain either goes to a previous story. What happened last time? What did a person do last time? Was this person safe last time? Did they show up for me last time? Right? Did they betray me last time? Or when I'm in my lizard brain, I make up a story. Now, no offense, but when I'm in my lizard brain, my stories don't end, and Brenda lived happily ever after. It's usually like, oh, everything's bad, and everyone hates me, and everything's my fault, and I'm alone, and everyone leaves, and it's my fault, and I deserve it. Doesn't end well. But this is the tricky part that I didn't know till recently, which is because our brain wants certainty, right? That's one of the reasons why we're all struggling right now, is because everything feels uncertain and different and new, and it's grief, and it's scary, and our brain doesn't have that certainty and that protocol that like we feel safe in. So we're rattled. So as soon as my brain gets a story, whether it is true or not, we get a hit of dopamine in our brain. Dopamine, like involved with addiction. So we can get addicted to completely wrong stories. And we have between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And if you're not paying attention to that story and then you're getting all these hits of dopamine, well, guess what you're doing? You're firing all day long. Oh, that person doesn't care about me. Oh, they, right? And then you're just reacting and reacting and reacting. And when you're reacting, you're this. And what's happening to your brain? It's going offline. So I know this is going to upset people to hear, but all of the data, I can just picture John Smith goes, oh God, Brenda, don't tell him to breathe. Sorry, John, I'm doing it. All of the data go back to this. They've done research, even with our military. The Navy SEALs, what do? It's all about the breath. All right, so I want to give you some tools for starting. Do you guys notice that you hold your breath? You hold your breath almost all the time. I tell people all the time, you're holding your breath, you're holding your breath. And I know that some of y'all are having panic attacks. I know that. I know some of y'all are having IBS. I know that. Because those are the things that happen when we're in that constant, it's wiring your nervous system for this. So you need a skill set for how do I turn that down. All right? The skill set is, number one, you have to notice. You have to notice you're in your lizard brain. And when I say notice, I invite you to notice it with curiosity instead of noticing it with judgment, like, ugh. I want you to notice with curiosity, oh, I'm just in my lizard brain. I just need to come back online. Does that make sense? I'm just offline. I just need to come back online. I was in my lizard brain before I did this. I looked at my heart rate, and it was 112. My heart rate's not usually 112. But I didn't feel safe because I felt a little exposed, right? I noticed it with curiosity. I'll just do a little box breathing. If it's good enough for the Navy SEALs, it's good enough for us, all right? If it's good enough for CEOs, it's good enough for us. So the data is pretty clear on this. When we don't feel safe, we contract the breath. And the vagus nerve, when you take deep breaths, the vagus nerve actually will help us to restore a sense of somatic safety. So what that means is it's going to turn on my parasympathetic because y'all are overcharged for sympathetic, all right? So what's box breathing? I thought I had a little picture here. I did. So here's a picture, and if you want it, you can have it. So I like visuals, all right? So you're literally just picturing a box. So I want to know, what can I do when I'm in my truck, right? What can I do? You want to kind of fill up your gut. Now I know it's not good to have your gut hanging out, but for this you kind of do, All right, so if you put your hand here, if you can't touch yourself, then fine, don't contaminate or anything. But you want this to kind of fill up from the bottom, thinking about from the bottom up. So all that a box breath is, it's easy peasy. You breathe in for 4 from here, through your nose, and then you hold it. And then you exhale through your mouth for the count of 4. And then you hold it for 4. All right? That's called box breathing, tactical breathing. Sometimes you'll hear it. But the main thing is, when we don't feel safe, real or imagine, then we hold our breath. All right? And it's causing the lizard brain to come on and you're overcharged. All right? You can do this all the time. All right? I did this sitting in the restroom by myself a minute ago, and my heart rate went from 112 to 65 in a minute and a half. Okay? That's pretty good. That's pretty good, right, Desai? Desai's here and he's shaking his head, yes. All right? So I didn't have to have any, but I couldn't just pretend like it wasn't there. I had to kind of acknowledge it and go, okay, box breathing. Now, if you Google vagus nerve hacks, all right, you'll get all kinds of different things that you can do to kind of help turn on the parasympathetic. One of those, the main thing is you want to have your exhale longer than your inhale. So if you like numbers and you feel like you need to count, then think maybe 4, 7, 8. It would be just a different variation. Breathing in for 4, holding it for the count of 7, and then exhaling to the count of 8. I'm showing off because I actually do this. I can go to like 15, all right? But I don't tell you to do things that I don't do. So yeah, if your exhale can get longer than your inhale, then do that. Notice with curiosity. I have 3 different offices, and every office that I have a sign that says notice that, all right? Noticing just means paying attention. Now, if you want to get woo-woo, people will say, oh, mindfulness is where it's at. They're actually correct. If you go to something called Google Scholar and you look up everything that mindfulness is beneficial for, you'll have a stack of paper about this big, all right? But if that feels too woo-woo for you, notice it. Just notice it and lean in, all right? There's something cool about noticing it. When you pay attention with curiosity, notice what? Notice your body. Am I doing this? Am I like this? Right? Is my heart rate going up? Do I feel that thing in my stomach? All right? Am I blaming other people? Am I having a story in my head? Everybody hates me. Nobody this. No. Everybody's out for themselves, right? Why do you think we have this toilet paper thing? People don't feel safe. And the story in their head is, I don't know, something crazy and has nothing to do with respiratory stuff, and then they go buy toilet paper. The story, right? That's a perfect example of how the people's story in their head. But the same way that anxiety is contagious, so is courage, all right? So lean into your courage with this breathwork stuff. So that's an easy thing. It only takes, like they say, 3 minutes. Like experts say 3 minutes to reset your nervous system. I'd say I've done it in a minute and a half. So I do that all the time. Now, if you're in a situation where you can't touch things, then no, don't do this. So remember this word, bilateral stimulation. Okay, there's nothing naughty about it. It's just bilateral, meaning both sides of the brain, right? Because when I'm in my lizard brain, I'm straight up back brain. I'm using right, your brain wires what you pay attention to. So if I'm all here, then guess what? Everything's wiring for that. When we know, right, this side of the brain controls this side of the body and vice versa. So if I can do a bilateral stimulation, something like this, and I can do this for myself, guess what? I have to use the whole brain. Isn't that weird? Okay, I'm actually trained and certified in certain types of trauma protocols, and like where we can legit get this stuff under control. And this is one of the things that we do. Now, when I do it, usually I'll use like a tool, but like after they have some of these active shooters in Texas and they're doing kind of a debrief, they have the people do this, all right? Because what it's gonna do is I'm gonna have this charge, but I'm gonna bring myself down so I can get a different association. So this is easy. If you can't do this, you can tap your knees. Sorry, tap your knees. All right? You'll see me with fidgets, and I know that they're not approved for PPE and being germ-free and all that, but if you have your own fidget, when you're fidgeting, what are you doing? You're using the left and the right sides of your brain. You're wiring to your front brain. You're wiring to your thinking brain. I just got to wake it up. Now, another cool thing is proprioceptive input. Big word, but proprioceptive will kind of bring a down person up and a person down, all right? So pushing on anything, even on yourself. You can do this anywhere, all right? When I'm working with kids in a school, if they're sitting down, I'll have them push against the weight of the chair, all right? I'll have them push against a wall, all right? Just doing that is going to get weighted blankets work on this concept of proprioceptive input, all right? I was using weighted blankets 15 years ago when they were $500, all right? But there's a reason for this. So trauma gets stuck in the body and trauma gets stuck in the feelings. So if I can lean into giving myself permission to feel some stuff and I can notice my body, what's going on, and then saying, oh, noticing with curiosity, not going, oh, I'm a loser. Nobody else has this. What's wrong with me? Just, oh, all right? Same with your eyes. You can do this with your eyes. I'm going to try to do this with the camera. So this is an Infinity 8, all right? So I actually used to do this with clients when they would have to go to court, and they'd be sitting in court, and they would be wiring for their lizard brain because they've been sitting in court, right? And even the judge asked me about it, and the judge was like, why are people making those weird eyes, but then they're talking better? I'm like, oh, it's because just a little trick, all right? So if you're having Infinity 8, all right, and you're just following with your eyes up and down and around, all that you're doing, can I see this? All right, all that they're doing is following with your eyes, all right? But what you're doing is you're crossing that field, all right? Sometimes I'll even say, think of an X, because when I'm thinking of an X, right, I'm thinking of both sides, all right? So if you were sitting at home, it would be like watching. So you don't want to use your head. You want to use your eyes and kind of follow my thumb. That sounds weird, right? Yeah, I've worked with thousands of people, and I've never had somebody that I cannot get out of a panic attack, even when it's like PTSD, big old panic attack, right? But this is some of the stuff that I use. And wake up my thinking brain. We just gotta wake it up, but we hack it that way. So you do it through your senses. So if somebody's in my room right now, and they're starting to have a panic attack, this is the first thing that I try. If this doesn't work, I use a different tool. But if I can do this, I will. What are 5 things that are blue that you can see in my room right now? So their initial thought is, what's blue, right? Because if you're having a panic attack, you're like, you just have this, right? So I'm hacking their senses. Blue is a thing, and your words live here. So I know if their words come back online, if your words come up, you're gonna be okay. What's blue? So usually they'll point, and I'll go, yeah, that's blue. Oh yeah, that ball is blue. Oh yeah, the marble's blue, right? And then they'll start talking. I'll go, okay, can you tell me 4 things that you can touch? All right? Don't say feel. Some other things will say feel, and then it gets people in their feelings, and that's not where we want to go. We just want to wake up their brain, all right? So waking up your brain will be like 4 things I can touch. I can touch my legs. Because when things happen is we go out of our body, all right? I can touch my knees. I can touch the chair. Okay, I can touch this. Oh, I can touch this. Okay, I can touch this. So I'm just grounding. But if I'm using my words, where am I? I'm in my thinking brain. I'm coming back. I'm not gone. What are 3 things you can hear? Okay, I can hear the side moving. I can hear the air conditioner. I can hear my breath, right? So 2 things that I can smell. Okay, I can smell my leftover coffee breath. I can smell my candy over here, whatever, all right? Things that you can taste. And I'll usually, if I'm doing this, I'm like, I don't have anything in my mouth. I'm like, can you taste your spit? You know, can you taste your leftover coffee? Can you taste, right? And so we're just trying to wake up the senses. Most of the time, I don't have to get to taste. Most of the time, I can get to things that you can hear and touch, and people come back online. Does that make sense? Doing things, simple things in the truck. Again, you have to notice. When you notice with curiosity, it has a direct connection with your amygdala, which is the thing that's going to set this off. Your amygdala is going to be setting off this lizard brain. So, and it's hypersensitive right now. And again, those things have helped you to survive. But we don't want you to just survive. We want you to live. And if you've got one part of your brain and your nervous system in the past, remembering bad stuff, and another part of your brain anticipating the bad stuff that's going to happen or could happen in the future, and you're making up all those stories and living there, then you really struggle to be in the present, which means I can't connect with my wife. I can't connect with my husband. My kid's birthday's today, and I can't really be present for it. I can't enjoy the present, so I want you to learn to do that. Give yourself permission to roll your neck. Give yourself permission to breathe. Give yourself permission to be curious. There's lots of apps out there that help with meditation. Yes, you can do that. That's very helpful. There are, and again, you would have to have washed hands and maybe do this at home, but there are certain parasympathetic pressure points that you can touch. I know, don't touch your face. My hands are clean, but literally touching like this, touching like this. These are also things that I did when I had my flashback. And I haven't had another one since, and but I knew what to do. Doing this, all right? So this is just turning on. You've got to move it. But if you're not acknowledging that it's there, it won't happen. All right, well, let me just mention one more thing. When we don't give ourselves permission to feel, all right? Feelings aren't vulnerable. Feelings just are, all right? The only people that don't feel feelings are sociopaths. So if you have feelings, good. You're not a sociopath, all right? But when we don't give ourselves permission to feel the hurt or to lean into the hurt, you know what we do? We offload it. We offload that hurt by yelling at people or by blaming or by numbing. Cream cheese icing for dinner, numb. I just wanted to not feel. So it's okay if you're struggling. It's okay if you numb every now and then. But if I ate a tub of this every time I had an uncomfortable emotion, I would be very unhealthy. It would not be good. If I drank every time I had an uncomfortable emotion, if I blamed, if I isolated every time I had an uncomfortable emotion, do you see where this is going? We numb, we put things, if I get on my video game for 5 hours every time I have an uncomfortable emotion, we can't connect with people. We're putting up, you can't selectively numb, so you can't numb the dark and not numb the light. So I would invite you also, there's lots of science about gratitude. And that's one practice that me and my kids are doing every day right now. And we did it pretty good before, but now we end our day with our gratefuls. What are you grateful? It's almost impossible to feel anxious and grateful at the same time in our physiology, right? And sometimes it's like, I'm grateful that, I have a job today. I'm grateful that, I have such an amazing boss that buys us gear. I'm grateful that I have good leadership. I'm grateful that, I have a tribe of people that care about me. I'm grateful. Right? So go back to, and it doesn't have to be big things. It can be, I'm grateful for my cup of coffee, right? But try to access that as well. We can do as many or as little of this as you guys want or need. We can do short little snippets if that helps at any time. Please just reach out to me and let me know what you need.